up on this week's edition of Club 904, the long-awaited reveal. For years, I gave you anywhere between 4 to 7 Mia's Mock Draft Mondays. No column this go-round, and so we are revealing one, possibly two scenarios for the Big Cats that I feel are the most likely for this month's NFL draft. Plus, we're going to run through perhaps a live mock as well, different scenarios that we could see the Big Cats go through. I know we heard GM James Gladstone say last week they don't care what the mock drafts say, but we're going to run through some scenarios ourselves here today on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network. Let's get after it. This is Club 904. What is going on, party people? Thanks so much for hanging out with us live here in Club 904. As always, I am your host, Mia O'Brien. We are streaming live on the various networks of the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network, or various channels, I should say, of the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network. As always, make sure wherever you are listening from, whether that's live right now or on demand, you drop a like, you drop a subscription to our friends over at Action Sports Jacks. As I alluded to, and as I tweeted out earlier today, for years here in the Jacksonville area, I have provided you guys with Mock Draft Monday columns each and every Monday, various networks that I've been a part of here in the Jacksonville area, specific curated mock drafts to your favorite team. Because of all the various jobs I've got these days, haven't had quite as much time for those weekly columns each and every Monday. And so we're going to take advantage. Less than a week, or rather a little over a week, I should say, because it's Tuesday. And right now, the Jaguars are not scheduled to pick for another 9 days for now. Perhaps it'll be 8 days in the 2026 NFL draft. I will tell you, and you guys have heard this from all the various mock drafts we've done live here on the program with our friends from across the world of the NFL community. We've had their input. I've shared my input. I think at this point in time, you know who some of my guys are in this year's crop of prospects. But we're going to put the pedal to the metal today. We're going to run through what I believe is the most likely scenario. Then after that, we're going to take a short break. We're going to run through some contingencies, a 1B, if you may. And then after we run through 1B, we'll do a quick speed round in which we run through an actual simulation over at ESPN.com. Speaking of mock drafts, I am keeping tabs. We were supposed to have one of our various friends from the draft world on the program here today, but between our friend Jordan Reed at ESPN, our friends Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers over at the NFL Stock Exchange, EJ Snyder over at Bootleg, who's currently on the Marathon Charity mock draft. Literally, if you head on over there, if you have two screens up, you can see that he and Brett Coleman, his co-host, have joined Trevor and Connor on their mock draft marathon, which of course goes towards charity. They're about to pick at 56 for the Big Cats. So if I look like I'm looking over there at my second screen, that's because I am curious who they have the Big Cats taking at pick 56. We're going to get after it, though, because I've already run through all the picks for your Big Cats. And I'm not going to bury the lead. I don't have them picking at 56. I don't have them going up into day one of the NFL draft, but I do have the Jaguars selecting at pick 48 in 1A, Mia's Mock Draft Monday, Tuesday, whatever we're calling this, Mia's Mock Draft 1A. I have the Big Cats selecting, yes, Gabe Akis, edge rusher, Illinois. For many of you, that's a bit surprising because as much as I've talked a lot about Akis throughout the course of the last few weeks here on the program, you heard James Gladstone last Thursday say that edge rusher is one of, if not the deepest position, and that matches the Jaguars' need that they have sorely needed for edge 3. For me, though, the value here for the Jaguars to give up the third of their 3 third-round picks, so all they give up to go up to 48 and make a trade with the Atlanta Falcons, is pick 100. I do not believe Gabe Akis will be there at 56, although ESPN's draft simulator says there's a 74% chance he is there. I'm not buying that. The other player, who I won't reveal just yet, but the other player who in 1B I have the Jaguars selecting with their first pick of the 2026 draft. I also have them trading away pick 100 to get to pick 48 to make that trade with the Atlanta Falcons, a first-year GM and Ian Cunningham. They're going to be starving for picks as they rebuild in the ATL. Why is Akis for me a no-brainer? They should moonwalk to the podium if he's there or if they are able to secure his services at 88. A true rugged edge defender. And while certainly the idea of being bulky built is no longer a priority in Jacksonville, I think what's so fascinating about Akis is that he would be a pick that the Jaguars would consider both under James Gladstone and Trent Baalke, because he is someone who has been a starter since his freshman campaign, as we pull up Lance Zierlein's write-up on him on NFL.com. Rugged edge defender, thicker guy. And while, as Lance says, and we've talked about this before on the program, he's more steak than sizzle, I think steak is what the Jaguars need, especially when they kick Trayvon Walker inside. He is maybe not the twitchy edge rusher that maybe I have the Jaguars selecting a little bit later in this mock draft scenario. But I think that, again, he's someone who is going to set an edge. He's going to run through you. He has plenty of playing experience. That is something that this regime covets. He's rugged, violent, all those buzzwords that you have heard Jacksonville Jaguars DNA in 2026 encompasses. Gabe Akis is that. He was also a captain at Illinois, a program that has obviously been on the rise since Burt Bielema arrived in Champaign-Urbana. Helps that, where did the Jaguars owner go to school? I believe he donates a lot of money. So file it away. I just think that while, yes, there is depth to be had at the edge rusher position, this is a guy who checks a lot of boxes for the Big Cats. And what's great about this, he doesn't have to be a premier 1-2 guy right away. You have Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen on premium contracts. On first and second down, it's those two. Or maybe you want to get a little tricky with it. And maybe you do want to kick Trayvon Walker inside on second down. Maybe you do want to have he and Akis on the field during rundown. You could get as wild as you want. He gives you some options, some versatility. And, here's a quote that Lance included in his write-up from an NFC scouting director. Akis is smart, great teammate, really, really strong, a play-through-your-face type of guy. I'm pretty sure we've heard defense coordinator Anthony Campanelli verbatim say that is the type of guy that the Jaguars want on their roster. All right, so as I alluded to, we're also monitoring our friends over at the NFL Stock Exchange. They're currently doing their live for charity mock draft, and I am curious who they picked at 56 for the Big Cats, because when I was last checking in with them before we went live with you guys here on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network, Grayson Holton was still available, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma that I know many of you have your eye on, myself included. And I was stunned to not only see he was still on the board at 56 in the boys mock draft scenario, but in every scenario I ran between the ESPN Draft Simulator and PFF this morning, Grayson Holton was available not just at 56, but at 81. And so I don't know if there is perhaps some sort of betting odds or something else that got out about the Oklahoma defensive tackle, who, from all accounts, there's no off-the-field transgressions. There's no reason he would fall. But I do think that if he is there, you also moonwalk to the podium. You sprint to the podium. I don't believe he's going to be there at pick 81. And so that is why, for me, at pick 81, I will go with, drumroll please, as we switch over my screen. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Hold on. Bueller. There's got to be an easier way to do this, isn't there? Let's pull him up. There he is. Boom. By way of Iowa State and Texas A&M, Tyler Onyedim. I'm going to butcher his last name once the Jaguars pick him. Fifth-year defensive tackle. Again, played his final season of college ball at Texas A&M. 13 games, 12 starts, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. The knock will be, is he actually an interior defensive lineman who can create a pass rush? 2.5 sacks, his final season of college ball. Up until then, he had 3 sacks in largely 3.5 seasons at Iowa State. Here's the thing, though, and both Chad Reuter and Lance Zierlein go in depth on NFL.com with this write-up. This is a player who at Iowa State was asked to simply hold the point. He played opposite Big Citrus, Dominique Orange, and all he had to do was play as a cog in the machine and allow for the second level of Iowa State to get after it defensively. He didn't have to do that under Mike Elko's system. Mike Elko believed that he could create havoc from the interior in the pass rush department. And so he is a pure 3 technique. He also could play an odd front end. I just think that he's someone who his best football is still ahead of him. He is someone who's also stout in the run defense, which I think is something Anthony Campanelli also values. And just like that, in a world in which it's either Tyler or it's Grayson Holton at 81, which again, I think is a pipe dream, but the simulators beg to differ, and Gabe Akis with your second round pick, your first overall pick, all of a sudden you have addressed edge and defensive tackle right off the bat. Lord help us if James Gladstone doesn't do that, because I think many of you would lose your minds. For weeks, I have said here on this program, as well as on the Brent and Austin show, that I believe the Jaguars will address tight end before the end of day 2. This is a name that we have floated each and every week, seemingly it feels like, here on the program. And again, in this scenario, in Mia's mock draft 1A, if you may, you do not have a number 100 overall pick, your third round pick if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this is your final day 2 pick. And so in this scenario, I have the Jaguars coming away with a rugged edge defender in Gabe Akis, Tyler Onyenim, the defensive tackle out of Texas A&M, and finally, at that all-important tight end 2 position. Another drum roll, please. Let's pull it up. Nope, wrong one. Come on, you can do it. We can do it, everybody. Where is he? Where is he? There he is. You guys knew this one was coming. Sam Roush, tight end, Stanford. This is a player who, like many of the tight ends who have been the apple of my eye before, I believe, because of the lack of productivity at the quarterback position, we are sorely undervaluing what this player will be able to do at the next level. The thing with Sam Roush, you have to remember, not only was he stuck at Stanford, where they really didn't have much of a quarterback to speak of during his 4 seasons of college ball, he had opportunities to leave Stanford, and he still chose not to. The boys over at NFL.com love him. Dane Brugler loves him. I'm going to get to Dane's write-up as well in the Beast over at The Athletic, but I loved what Lance and company had to say. In a draft landscape full of pass-catching tight ends, because to be clear, much like edge rusher, this is a deep tight end class. Roush stands out as one of the few plug-and-play wide tight ends, inline blocking tight ends, that's available. He can make cutoff blocks in zone and combo blocks in gap schemes. He holds his own in pass pro. As a receiver, he's not stiff, but he lacks elusiveness underneath. And Dane echoes these same sentiments in the Beast. He says, Roush isn't without his warts, but he offers a traditional wide tight end skill set, competitiveness to handle dirty work as a blocker, athleticism to be a functional underneath target. He has the makeup and toughness to quietly become an integral part of an NFL offense. Once upon a time, I watched George Kittle with my own 2 eyes in his junior and senior seasons in Iowa City. And while C.J. Beathard, more of a quarterback than Stanford has had to say over the last few years, he was someone, George, who, because of the offense he was playing in, perhaps the national media didn't have that same perception of him that those of us in Iowa City did at the time. He caught 7 touchdowns his junior campaign, and you'd be crazy to tell me that guy couldn't block even when he was a junior, let alone as a senior, although in an injury-maligned season. And so ever since 2017, when George graduated and went off to the San Francisco 49ers, every draft cycle I've looked for that guy who's an inline blocker, and we are just absolutely missing the picture because of the ecosystem around him. Once upon a time, I thought Hunter Long was that guy. It's true. Go look at the receipts at firstcoastnews.com. In 2021, I thought that Hunter Long would be a 4th-round pick of the Jaguars, and he could be that George Kittle type archetype. He was not. And then he was signed by the Jaguars 5 years later and quickly has fallen out of favor, it appears, although he is still under contract, would be that tight end 3, technically, if only in writing right now, behind Quentin Morris, who was re-signed this offseason. He's probably more of your tight end 3, to be honest. And then, of course, Bretton Strange. And that's where Roush and his ability to transition to this offensive system, he'd have a little bit more of a runway than Kittle even did in San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan's system. Bretton Strange is tight end 1. But in this system, especially because Liam Cohen derives from the Sean McVay tree, that, as we all know, They want to run 12 and 13 personnel in 2026 more than anybody. We saw it in the NFC Championship game. We saw it throughout the course of the postseason. I just continue to get this inkling that Liam Cohen wants to take a lesson or two from his old boss. And that's why I believe the Jaguars will run more 12 and 13 personnel in 2026. We know they want to run the ball and be physical. That requires tight ends to be on the field. It also requires tight ends who you do not know if they are lining up to block or to split out and be a receiver. So that's day 2. The first day of the Jaguars picking, because they don't go all the way back into the first round in my mock draft scenario. Let's take a look at day 3. But before we look at all those day 3 picks, and again, at this point in time, I have only made one trade in mock draft 1A. This is an interactive program. And so I look forward to seeing your comments and questions. Haven't had a chance to look. And here they are. Hef, Social, Brandon Baller. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Let's see what you boys think of the first 3 picks. Social and Brandon both say they love Akis. Would they need to move up for him? Yes. Hef says, do not forget the team plane is stationed at, I guess, in Illinois. Interesting. Social, wouldn't there be other edges around that area? R. Mason Thomas, Derek Moore, Malachi Lawrence. Hef, Moore is the only equivalent to Akis out of that group. Hef, we're on the same wavelength. You already know that from being a member of the Mo Bryan NFL Notebook Discord channel. But yes, to answer Social's question, that would be the one player who I would consider if you were to go edge and wait at 56. And you know Gabe Akis isn't there and Grayson Holton's not going to be there, contrary to what the simulators currently say. That would be the edge rusher that I would go with in Derek Moore. Do not discount the Kevin Wilkins connection, the Jaguars outside linebackers coach, Derek Moore at Michigan. Devin Moore is a whole nother story. We're not going to talk about him. He's not in either of these scenarios. Fair warning, everybody. Derek Moore was coached by Kevin Wilkins, who, of course, has now been a part of the Jaguars staff this past season and this upcoming season. Hef brought up Bud Clark. I'm glad you did, because that is a name that it was very difficult for me to leave off of here, because I continue to hear smoke that the Jaguars had scouts in Fort Worth. Were they looking at the linebacker? Were they looking at the safety? Were they looking at somebody else entirely? Was it all smoke to begin with? I don't know. But that is a name that, again, if we're to talk about guys who, in my estimation, fill those buckets that a Jaguar is supposed to have, according to what Duval DNA, from what we know, what that is, Bud Clark is another guy who plays like his hair is on fire, runs through people, is competitive, a maniac, but at the same time would do anything to protect his team and protect his teammates, and also never stops working. It was very difficult for me to not select Bud Clark, but I do believe, and I know some of you guys are noting, I said this on the Locked On Jaguar Squad show yesterday, and I'll continue to say it. This is the regime of common sense. And just know, you guys have been worried that for the last 6, 7, years, that edge 3 has never truly been filled. That pass rushing defensive tackle since Calais Campbell bid adieu has never really been filled, those 2 roles. I just get this inkling they're going to come right out of the gates and address it right away. It's something we saw last year when they didn't address edge in the NFL draft because the opportunity didn't present itself. And what did they do on the Sunday after the draft? They immediately had Emmanuel Ogbah on the phone and signed him to a contract. And that's where I just think they're going to come out the gates. They're going to address edge, defensive tackle right away, tight end shortly to follow. But safety is such an interesting one because I don't think they're done at that group either. Speaking of guys who will literally run through your face, let's meet the first pick on day 3 of Mia's mock draft 1A, as we are calling it. Let's pull it up. Here we go. Stand by. His name, and this one's going to surprise you guys because we haven't talked a whole lot about him. Keyshawn Elliott, linebacker out of Arizona State. Ho, ho, ho! See? I had a bit of a surprise waiting for you guys. The knock on Elliott, at least according to those in the draft community, some people feel that he's a little too bulky, maybe not as twitchy. And for those of you who want a true plug-and-play replacement for Devin Lloyd, and I respect the fact that Keyshawn Elliott also was a Mike linebacker at Arizona State, and so some of you are seeing this and you're like, oh my goodness, she's writing Foye out of the picture. I'm not writing Foye out of the picture. I believe Keyshawn Elliott could play either position. And contrary to those who say they question his sideline-to-sideline speed, I'm not one of those people because this guy is also a competitive maniac. He's someone who I think, because of the insane work ethic, this administration is going to love him. 6'2", 231, 31 and a quarter inch arms. I know that the results from his measurements, not exactly what you wanted throughout the pre-draft process. They have a round 5 grade on him at NFL.com, and yet our friend Dane Brugler at The Athletic has a 3rd round grade. He's his 8th overall linebacker. Dane says that Elliott must prove his value on passing downs, but the instincts and football character are attractive qualities for what NFL teams desire at middle linebacker. Again, I'm not trying to say you're replacing Foye Oluokun. What I am saying is that you're giving yourself flexibility, because not only will Foye Oluokun in 2 years be a free agent, but Ventrell Miller is also entering a contract year this upcoming year. Elliott is the type of guy, again, he's going to run through your face. He's going to be the first guy in the locker room. In the morning, Arizona State's linebackers called themselves the werewolves because they were up at weird hours, just prepping and doing workouts on the field and doing walkthroughs on their own. He was a high school quarterback. We saw with Jacoby Myers' experience previously as a quarterback on the offensive side of the ball, that was something that this regime really valued because of the intangibles and the ability to call out signals and recognize what's going on around you. He's someone who I think it bears, for those of you who haven't watched his tape, I would encourage you to do so. Our friend John Ledyard over at his Substack, you can go check it out. And he, of course, does the Read Optional Pod with Ollie Connolly. He has him as his number 4 overall linebacker in the class. He said after the big 3, this is the guy he would target. Monster against the run, capable in coverage. So again, a lot of different views on him. He also can be used as a blitzer. And that's where I think that's the Devin Lloyd component, right? Maybe you don't resolve the Devin Lloyd-sized hole in this defense with one player, but you can resolve it through the aggregate. So Keyshawn Elliott, pick 124 in this scenario. The next one's interesting. This is a guy, and I'm going to have to actually Google him, so I hope you guys enjoy my quick little sharing of my screen. There it is. Caden Curry. Short, not necessarily undersized, perhaps, because he is someone who clocks in at 257. So it's not like he's like a 240-pound edge rusher by any means. But he's someone who, for whatever the reason, maybe it's because he only started for a year, he was buried on that depth chart at Ohio State on the national championship team, played a lot of special teams, though, in Columbus. Most of the simulators, most of the evaluations, and from what I've heard, have him going in the 5th round, which is crazy to me when you consider some of the highlights that we saw from this guy in Ohio State's 2025 season. When Fernando Mendoza got knocked on his butt in the Indiana-Ohio State game, it was Caden Curry that laid that little hip check there and barely looked like he had to move all that much. There's another clip from the Indiana game in which he literally forces the right tackle because of a quick spin move that was his second counter. He legit forces the right tackle to have to jump into a 3-point stance in the middle of the rep because he was that twitchy and that quick. And I know that that's the knock for some. They don't think he's that twitchy. The fact that he could be available in the 5th round, in my opinion, when you hear James Gladstone say there's depth at the edge rusher position, this is the guy who is that guy. Dane Brugler's right up on him. He is a sawed-up, face-up pass rusher, basic approach. Plays alert and physical, though, affects the game with a white-hot motor, which is his best attribute. And I also think that special teams value can't be dismissed because Caden Curry was a guy who was a part of Ohio State's special teams for 4 seasons. And that's where I look at it and I say, even if he is competing with Danny Strigow and BJ Green for a jersey on game day, it's the type of value that you would love to have in the 5th round. Our next guy, let's see if the old StreamYard's going to let me copy and paste here. I think it will. It will. This is one I keep going back to. And for Hef and a couple of the others hanging out with us here in Club 904 who brought up Bud Clark, I would counter that with Genesis Smith out of Arizona. I believe there will be a Jedd Fisch connection. At some point in time in the Jaguars 2026 NFL draft class, there is going to be a Liam Cohen Jedd Fisch connection. Maybe it's Dakario Davis who followed Jedd Fisch from Arizona to Washington. The reason I have the Jaguars taking him at 166 as opposed to taking one of those other 2 safeties on day 2 is because of the position flexibility. Christian Braswell and Jarian Jones have told me they both can play all 5 positions in terms of cornerback and safety if you needed them to. We know Antonio Johnson can come into the slot. Travis Hunter, probably going to play outside corner. Buster Brown, primarily an outside corner. Jordan Lewis can flex inside and outside. This is a guy who could not only flex inside and outside, but also could eventually become a free safety. We do not know what Caleb Ransaw is or what the plan is for him. Davis could also provide you that same versatility. Not saying he's going to be your Nicky Manwari or Kyle Hamilton, but the profile is intriguing. 6'4", 33 and 3/8 inch arms, 194 pounds, ran a 4.41 40-yard dash. And look, I understand that in terms of the production, maybe it's not, crazy in terms of interceptions and pass breakups, but he's physical in the run game. He is a physical corner in terms of affecting the wide receiver. Maybe he gets beat a time or two in a foot race, running routes. But this is a guy who I think in terms of what he could be, and if you're taking him with pick 166 in the 5th round, it gives you a little bit more to work with in terms of, hey, we don't know what he's going to be, but we just know he's a good football player. So let's maximize that. Our next player, our next pick in this 1A mock draft comes from, and this one's interesting. This one is very interesting, folks. You probably see me writing his name up. Oh, well, this is taking out the element out of surprise if you're watching on YouTube. Skylar Gill-Howard out of Texas Tech. One of the more polarizing prospects that we've seen throughout the course of this draft process. Much like Grayson Holton, who went from being a potential 5th or 6th round pick all the way now to potentially being a early 2nd round pick. Gill-Howard also has fluctuated greatly in terms of the consensus on the well-traveled and self-made sixth-year senior coming out of Texas Tech. 6'1", 280, 30 and 3/4 inch arms. He's an undersized defensive tackle. But again, in this scenario, you are taking him in the 6th round. Started his career as a walk-on at Upper Iowa, then went to Northern Illinois for 3 seasons before finishing his college career at Texas Tech, where he unfortunately played in just 6 games and then missed the second half of the season with an ankle injury. They have him at NFL.com as a 7th rounder, which is crazy because I saw people have him as high as the 4th round during the combine. Dane Brugler also has him as a 7th round pick. He's just somebody who is so self-made and so quote unquote intangibly rich. And then you account for the injury and maybe we don't have the full picture of him, that I just come away thinking, you know what? Once you get to the 5th, the 6th, the 7th round, they're all dart throws. I think this is a worthy dart throw to pair with. You've already drafted Tyler Onyedim out of Texas A&M, another defensive tackle on day 2. Now you get another defensive tackle to play with. We know the Rams have taken an undersized defensive lineman or two and have struck gold with him. Maybe the Jaguars can with Gill-Howard. The ESPN simulator says 71% chance he is there at 203. So it's not like a guarantee he's even going to be there because I think he's just been such a mercurial prospect. The next 3 are very interesting. They're all in the 7th round for the Big Cats, as you guys know. So I only made one trade in mock draft 1A. I got the Jaguars taking a guy, and I swear, this is not me being biased. I know there's some of you who are going to say, oh boy, you knew she was going to take an Iowa guy. She can't help herself. But hear me out. If the Jaguars were to draft Caden Weegan with their first of 3 7th round picks, there's only a 79% chance he's there, by the way. I wouldn't be surprised if they pull the trigger on in the 6th round with the pick that I have them taking Gill-Howard with. Just because Parker Washington is going to have an elevated role in this offensive scheme with Travis Hunter now majoring on the defensive side of the ball. Look at Caden Weegan and see a project that's Jamal Agnew-like. He's not going to be your wide receiver 4, your wide receiver 5, because he doesn't have to be. The goal with him, with Caden Weegan, the Iowa return man, and yes, wide receiver, who did show inside-outside flexibility during his final season in Iowa City, the goal with Caden Weegan is that you're just going to force the other team in punt and kick scenarios to kick it out the back of the end zone. When you're punting, you have to absolutely nail that thing inside the 10-yard line and ensure that your coverage team is getting down the field quick enough where this guy can't get out of the way. Because he led the nation in punt return average last year, multiple touchdowns in kick and punt return, the heir apparent to Cooper DeJean. He is someone who, if the Jaguars don't take him at 233, there's a good chance the Rams do. Just throwing it out there. And do you really want to see a world in which Caden Weegan becomes the next Sean McVay project, especially for a team that is looking and staring down the barrel of extending its longtime punt returner because he has grown on the offensive side of the ball? And you're not going to play Parker Washington at punt returner if he is your number 2 or number 3 wide receiver. And if Bashal Tootin is your number 1 or 1B, 1A running back, you're probably not going to play him at kick returner all that much. Sure, LaQuint Allen can play there, but I would not just gloss over this idea of the Big Cats just being okay with trotting those 2 guys out and saying, yeah, no, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. They're still going to return kicks. I just don't see it happening. This next guy, I don't even have a write-up, so I'm going to have to bring it back to my screen. That kind of says it all. He's not in the Beast. He's not on NFL.com, but he played for Liam Cohen. His name is Dane Key, wide receiver, Nebraska. Dane Key was not only recruited by Liam Cohen at Kentucky, he is your Tim Jones replacement. Bigger-bodied guy, spent last year in Lincoln, played for Matt Rule, someone who also could give you some special teams availability. Just keep an eye on that one. Keep an eye on Dane Key. There's some clips floating around the internet of just how physical he is. There's one, this is from @InHarmsWay19 over at RGR Football. This is actually, ironically, from the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl 2 years ago. This incredible, it's an over-the-middle catch. So it was an in-breaking route. Then he cuts back out to the left and just like with one hand swats the defender away. It's a grown-ass man rep, as they like to say. But he is someone who Liam Cohen has raved about before. There are pictures floating around the internet of Dane Key and his family with Liam Cohen in his living room. If it's not Dane Key, maybe there's someone else who Liam Cohen goes back to those recruiting grounds from when he was the offense coordinator at Kentucky. He knows the family already, and especially looking for this wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. I think you're going to see Liam really tap into his knowledge from those guys, boots on the ground, from being a part of the recruiting process. And our final pick of Mia's mock draft 1A, let's pull him up. This is a guy who I'm curious because we saw the Jaguars were willing to say goodbye to Evan Ingram because they want inline blocking tight ends. But Dallin Bentley out of Utah is a real interesting project. Again, he's an F tight end, so he is more of the Evan Ingram type. 6'4", 253. He does have a bit more size. 33 and 1/8 inch arms. Started at Snow College, was a second-team JUCO All-American. He had just 3 catches in his first 2 seasons at Utah, then 48 catches last year. He's an inline tight end, but they mostly use his size to have him outside or just keep him as a blocker. So I'm really interested because he does have a long wingspan. The tape is kind of all over the place. So that's a name where I do think you could see the Jaguars go. But more than just him being the final pick in Mia's mock draft 1A, I would just tell you this. Much like I think they're going to address tight end before day 2 is through, I just think they're going to take 2 tight ends. Because with the Sumer Sports numbers that I've been looking at, seeing that it's not just McVay, but it's Mike McDonald in Seattle, the amount of 2, 3 tight end sets that we are going to see run across the National Football League this year, I would be shocked if Liam Cohen is not among the OCs that is leading the way and saying we are leading into the big boys, we are leading into availability, multiple fronts, flexibility, whatever you want to call it. Let's see what you guys have to say so far. You're throwing out a bunch of other names, talking about Jacob Rodriguez, Kyle Lewis, Elarm Zor. Dude must be nice. That's your new punt returner. Oh, yes. Thank you, Hef. Hef says no Hezekiah Massis, who's been his guy at cornerback for quite some time. Hey, he could be there in the 5th round as well. I would also throw Avery Smith out of Toledo as somebody who I'd have my eye on. Wink, wink. Tacario Davis, though, I picked him mostly for the exercise half of we probably need to have somebody with a jetfish tie. And then we've also heard your new punt returner with, I'm assuming that was Weegan. Maybe that was somebody else. Let us know in the chat. We've still got to run through my second scenario. So again, that's Mia's mock draft. Like that's the one that if I had to, put money on it, that's 1A. That's why we just spent 35 minutes going through it. we are going to run through a second alternative scenario. And if we have time, we'll do a live mock draft as well. Speed round. You are watching Club 904. It's a mock draft edition here on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 now.
People helping people. It's at the core of what Alive Credit Union is all about, and it's been that way for over 70 years. From the start in 1954 to today, the mission remains to inspire financial wellness and give you a financially fit lifestyle. Alive Credit Union and its employees are committed to not only serving their valued members, but also our community here in Northeast Florida. I had a chance to see that commitment firsthand as Alive partnered with our Action Sports Jax 24/7 team to bring you Armada men's and women's soccer broadcasts. Inside the 18, it is a shot, and it's a goal! Chloe Chivers! And that connection to the community continues with Alive Credit Union's support of the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville. Alive Credit Union's commitment to our community also involves serving the financial needs of all first responders through the recent merger partnership with City and Police Federal Credit Union. Join the community and become a member of Alive Credit Union today. Find out the many ways you can be inspired in financial wellness at alivecu.coop.
Most of us know how to throw. But you need to know what to throw. I'm not talking about footballs, baseballs, softballs. We're talking about those items you need to recycle. Republic Services explains it easy. Recycling simplified. 1. Know what to throw. When in doubt, throw it out. 2. Empty, clean, and dry those materials. It takes an extra minute, but it makes a big difference. And 3. Don't bag it. This makes the recycling process faster and more efficient. This is a look at the Republic Services North Florida Recycling Center. You can make this process even more efficient. By utilizing those 3 steps, Republic Services can help you become a better recycler in your home. Learn more at recyclingsimplified.com.
If you look good, you feel good. And the medical professionals here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics are here to make you feel your best. I'm on camera every week, and I have a confession to make. I'm not always confident in my appearance. Can you see my dark circles? Is my makeup highlighting my fine lines instead of covering them up? I question it all. So when I found out about the wide variety of procedures here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics, I knew help was just one appointment away. Medical Director Dr. Megan Deacon Casey and her board-certified physicians have been using the latest in cutting-edge technology for the last 10 years, giving men and women their personal confidence boost. From Botox, fillers, Morpheus 8, and so much more. The hardest part was figuring out what I needed. Thankfully, the medical team walked me through what would work best for me through a free consultation. Come look and feel your best with the team here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics. Visit them at one of their 2 locations, either over in Ponte Vedra or on the south side.
Welcome back into Club 904, the unveiling of Mia's mock draft for 2026. We already ran through my primary scenario, 1A, if you may, but because the Jaguars have some wiggle room to play with here in 2026, and because I do think there's a couple scenarios that we need to explore, we are going to run through scenario 1B. Before we do so, this is why we love you guys who leave a chat, leave a comment on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network, because you're out here super sleuthing for us here at Club 904. Thank you to Paladine, who says, just saw the Jags were at Mount Vernon High School doing background work on Houston tight end Tanner Koziel, had a strong Senior Bowl, 6'7", 240, strong contested catch guy, not super athletic, maybe tight end 2 perhaps. Again, as you guys just saw when we ran through scenario 1A, I don't think it's tight end 2, to be honest with you, Paladine. I think that that's tight end 4, maybe blossoms into tight end 3 one day, because I think the Jaguars are coming away with 2 tight ends, one way or another. Whether one is on day 2, they both are on day 3. I think the Big Cats come away with 2 tight ends in either of my scenarios. As I've also told you, in both my scenarios, I have the Jaguars trading up to pick 48. In this second scenario, they go defensive tackle. It's a guy who you probably saw his viral moment on the NFL Network a few weeks back when Trayvon Walker got his extension. It's Georgia defensive tackle Christian Miller. Excuse me for a quick drink of water. 6'4", 321, 33-inch arms, 10-inch hands. He is someone who, similar but different, to his mentor, Trayvon Walker. Perhaps the production in the eyes of some not there. His final season in Athens started all 14 games, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He's an even front nose tackle, according to Lance Zierlein, although I would argue he can play a little bit more versatility in terms of going to a 1 or a 3 technique. But hey, that's just one man's opinion. And that's something that Dane Brugler echoed as well in The Beast. He said he's up and down the line with his anchor and rush consistency, rock solid as a run defender, excels on early downs. His role will shift depending on the scheme. He believes he is a 1-gapping nose and a 4-man front. Again, I'm not running Devon Hamilton out because I think he is your nose tech, but I just think a player like Christian Miller maybe can play a little bit more 3 tech than we're giving him credit for, and not to the point of some of the other names we're going to run through. But again, I just think he's somebody who's going to hold the point of attack, but also give you a little bit of juice from the interior as well. And of course, if you have a comment, if you have a question, make sure you leave it in the chat. So that's pick 48. I have the Jaguars moving up from 56 in 1B, scenario 1B. Then I have them, after trading away pick 100 to move to 48, trading down from 81. And by trading with the Washington Commanders, the Jaguars acquire pick 147, 182, and a 2027 third-round pick. You know James Gladstone's always planning ahead. Doesn't get the third-round comp pick, perhaps, that he wanted for Devin Lloyd or thought he might get, as well as a potential third-rounder for Travis Etienne, looking like both those guys will be fourth-rounders. And so the Jaguars make plans to get a third-rounder anyways. And then at pick 88, they select, drum roll please, as I pull up his profile, a guy who, in my opinion, has the best chance to be the Milton Williams of this class, Southeastern Louisiana's Caleb Proctor, 6'2", 291, 33-inch arms, again, sensing a trend, undersized defensive lineman, 4.79 40 at the combine, was the Southland Conference Player of the Year. He led his team with 13 tackles for loss and 9 sacks. He's an interior guy who is undoubtedly going to give you pass rush. And I think that, again, you heard it from James Gladstone last week at the pre-draft luncheon. Those guys just aren't walking the earth readily available. He is someone who's going to come in raw. That's why you have Eric Armstead under contract for another year. That's why you have Christian Miller in this scenario as well, because now those two guys can grow alongside each other. But much like Milton Williams once upon a time with the Philadelphia Eagles, I just think he's a young guy who could really develop into something more. This next guy, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, I've heard this from a lot of folks, never really, much like Sam Roush, who we selected in 1A, or mock draft scenario 1A. It's a guy who never really had the chance to truly shine in Athens, and that's Oscar Delp. And I know there's at least one Georgia fan out there in the comments right now on the Action Sports Jacks network that's going to be mad at me. But it's just the reality of the situation. And I know injuries played a role as well. 6'5", 245 pounds. In his final season, he started all 14 games, had just 1 touchdown, and averaged 13.1 yards per catch. His dad played lacrosse. I don't know if that's still a joke, but I'm going to just throw that out there anyways. He's a real fluid athlete, as Lance Zierlein and Chad Reuter write about. He, for me, is someone who, and I don't want to knock Kirby Smart, but just using him as a blocker is a disservice to someone who, again, much like Roush, much like Sam Roush out of Stanford, much like George Kittle coming out of Iowa once upon a time, I just feel like he's a guy who we have barely seen the floor, quite frankly, of what he can be as a receiver. And once again, spoiler alert, I have the Jaguars selecting 2 tight ends in this mock draft scenario 1B. I'm going to quickly just breeze through at pick 147, which again, in this scenario, the Jaguars would have acquired in that trade back with the Washington Commanders. I would have them selecting Caden Curry there. There's a 79%, greater than 79% chance, according to the ESPN draft simulator, that Curry would be there at 147. In mock draft scenario 1A, we had him going at 164. Not as great a chance he's there. It's closer to 60 some odd percent. 147, undoubtedly going to be there. So play those odds as you may. But again, an undersized edge rusher out of Ohio State. But when I say undersized, I mostly mean he's just short. He's actually pretty, in terms of arm length, in terms of the width, he's pretty thick. At 164, Jaguars with 2 fifth-round picks, as you may recall. At 164, because at this point in time, if this is how the Jaguars board falls, you're all going to be losing your mind because you're going to be yelling, oh my goodness, they haven't gotten a linebacker to replace Devin Lloyd. Look no further. This guy I don't know personally, but my good friend Ian Fitzsimmons of ESPN Radio does. Bryce Betcher, two-sport athlete at the University of Oregon. Arguably one of the most athletic off-ball linebackers in the class. I know he's not Elam Zor out of TCU, who you all love, thanks to T-Wig. But Bryce Betcher is a guy who's going to get it done. Competitive maniac, 6'1", 230 pounds. He's one of those guys who, again, like, he's not going to be an athletic freak per se, but just based off of the competitive spirit, in my opinion, the ability to play both a Mike and more of, I don't want to say a Sam, but more, he's going to be able to play, I would argue, both linebacker positions at the interior. And I just think that, again, that competitive spirit, why did they select Jack Kaiser last year? I would say Bryce Betcher's kind of in that same mold, but I do think he could play right away. And again, it also helps that he had, the two-sport college career. So obviously is very good at time management, was a captain at Oregon, classic C-ball, get-ball defender. He's got the right personality. I would have the Jaguars taking Bryce Betcher at 164. And then with pick 166, they would double down on edge again after selecting Caden Curry a little bit earlier on day 3 with the one, the only, Mad Max Llewellyn, 6'6", 258, 32 and a quarter inch arms. Many of you are screaming, oh my goodness, he's just Danny Strigow. What's interesting about Max is he's 6'6", but it's very hard to describe, but the guy's got a bag of pass rush moves, and that's the real reason that I'm really intrigued by Llewellyn. He plays like his hair is on fire. He's tall, built well, and he's the type of guy where maybe he's a little bit skinnier, but I do think he can still set the edge, and just another flavor, if you may, in that edge rusher room. There are also those of you watching this right now or listening back on demand, and you're upset because I haven't taken an offensive lineman in either of our draft scenarios. And so in the 6th round, pick 187, I present to you DJ Campbell, 3 years starting right guard at Texas. And now the athletic limitations that exist, 6'3", 313 pounds, ran a 5.01 40-yard dash in the pre-draft process. I understand he's a guard-only prospect. There's some limitations athletically, but he's tough, he's smart, and he's physical, and he was a 3-year starter for Steve Sarkisian. If you can get him in the 6th round and you want to eventually move Chuma Edoga off the island and have somebody just be developmental for you, doesn't get a jersey on game day, is basically stashed for his rookie campaign, this is a pretty good consolation prize, I would argue, even if, unlike Edoga, he can't really be a swing tackle for you. But if you're keeping Walker Little for an extended period of time, I think if you are looking towards, hey, we're going to have Wyatt Milam eventually be the right guard or the left guard, depending on what your long-term play is, and we need someone else because we're not so sure about Cooper Hodges' injury, this is someone who I think it's worth the flyer in the 6th round. Speaking of flyers, I have the Jaguars selecting Jam Miller, the running back out of Alabama, with the 203rd overall pick. But to be honest with you, he's an overall well-rounded running back. He does a little bit of everything. Ran a 4.4 240, which was a lot faster, I think, than many people thought. He's pro caliber size, as Lance Zierlein writes. So because he is 5'10", so he's not short, but plug and play a running back. Don't judge me for that one. I don't have them taking Caden Weegan in this scenario because we've already hit our Iowa quota. So come on down, Mr. Barry Brown, another former pupil of Liam Cohen over at LSU after starting his college career at Kentucky. There is your punt returner, as Hef would like to say. There is your kick returner. And again, doesn't have to be an immediate factor in your wide receiver room right away. I also, with 2 more 7th-round picks to go, have the Jaguars tapping back into the tight end well with Riley Nowakowski, a player who honestly is going to be more of a fullback, and that's where I think he ends up being in this scenario, more of your tight end 4 and does get a jersey on some game days, because I do think that that could create some interesting mismatches where the Jaguars could really tap into the idea of heavier personnel sets without necessarily explicitly having 3 tight ends line up on the line of scrimmage. And then finally, you knew I had to throw him in, especially because this is the final name of my mock draft, 1A and 1B. It's Chase Roberts out of BYU. Coach Tataki told me on ESPN Radio he and Puka Nacua believed Chase Roberts would be better than Puka. We've seen how good Puka has been in Los Angeles after being selected in the 5th round by James Gladstone. 6'3", 209. Again, athletic limitations exist. They said that Puka Nacua was athletically limited, and look how that one turned out. All right, we just ran through a lot. I don't think we're going to have time to do a live mock draft, and that's A-okay because you guys have left tons of questions, comments. Let's take one more break. We'll come back. We'll answer those, and we'll wrap up this week's episode of Club 904.
You don't see a pit, it ain't legit. When you hear that, you think Bono's Pit Barbecue, a staple in Northeast Florida now for 75 years. A place that feels like home with friendly service, a meeting place for friends, family, or business occasions. On the menu, the corn nuggets are a favorite in our house, but there's something for everyone. Sandwiches, platters, salads, sides, desserts, and family feasts. You see Bono's all over the place in Northeast Florida. You know, there are almost 20 locations in the Jacksonville area now, so stop on by, sit down, and dine in with Bono's. You can also take it to go. There are drive-thrus in many of the locations, and they have delivery options too. Just download the Bono's app to make things easy. I signed up for the loyalty program, and you can too to get special offers. If Jacksonville is home, few things feel more Jacksonville than Bono's Pit Barbecue. Celebrate 75 years and many more to come. Bono's Pit Barbecue. If you don't see a pit, it ain't legit.
Choose your own adventure. It's not just a saying, but a way of life here at Cycles of Jacksonville. And whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels, at Cycles of Jacksonville, a great adventure awaits. With brands like Honda, Vespa, Segway, and Triumph, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with their inventory featuring a 60,000 square foot building. If 4 wheels is more your thing, check out the largest selection of Honda Talons in the entire county. No matter what you're looking for, Cycles of Jacksonville is going to have the selection you need, all with great financing and rebates. Plus, if you're active duty military, Cycles of Jacksonville will offer you 0% financing along with great discounts for military and first responders. And when you want to get off the road and set sail, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with everything you need to get on the water. So if you're ready for a great adventure, let Cycles of Jacksonville be your guide. Located off Atlantic Boulevard, or check out their website at cyclesofjacksonville.com.
Nobody but Nimnicht. Our family has purchased 6 vehicles from Nimnicht Buick GMC. The #1 Buick GMC dealer in Jacksonville has lots of inventory to choose from with their best price guarantee. Who gives you top dollar for your trade? Nobody but Nimnicht. Save up to $10,000 off select new GMC Sierras or get rates as low as 1.9%. You know, I'm a truck guy. GMC Sierra, my trim level is an SLT. This one's an Elevation. Pretty good looking color as well. So here at Nimnicht Buick GMC, you have a lot to pick from. My father-in-law, he drives this, an Enclave, so I feel like that GMC in the family. 2025 is coming around the corner, which means it's almost time to close out those 2024s this summer. You can schedule a test drive at NimnichtBuickGMC.com, and while you're there, check your trade value and customize your payment options. Nimnicht is there for you, even on Sundays. So, who has put in the most years and stands behind a better experience? The answer's simple. Nobody but Nimnicht. Your friends in the car business since 1941. GMC, we are professional grade.
Welcome back into Club 904. Again, low on time, so we won't be able to do our lightning round mock draft, 1C if you may, but was excited to share Mia's mock draft with you guys, 1A, as well as some contingency plans in 1B. For those of you joining us live who may have missed it, I do, in terms of big themes for the Jaguars heading into next weekend's NFL draft, I do believe for some of the players that, in my estimation, just me talking to people, understanding of the draft, I do think for some of those cats, they are going to have to move up. Not all the way back into the first round, although I did love James Gladstone's coy, for now, comments at the pre-draft luncheon last week. But I do think that sweet spot of 48, where the Atlanta Falcons currently slated to pick in the second round, a team with a first-year GM looking for more picks as they rebuild. Maybe that is an area where the Jaguars could get back up and use one of those 3 third-round picks to move up and secure the rights to a player like Gabe Akis or Christian Miller, who I believe truly have what the Jaguars are trying to build under this second-year triumvirate. I also think there's a good chance that if they move up in the second round, they'll try to trade back at a different point in time to accrue more capital and to accrue more targets at the proverbial draft board. That's a big reason why I wanted to run you guys through 1A and 1B today. Because while, yes, in 1A, we made just that one trade, I think they're going to be making multiple trades throughout the course of the NFL draft. And so we ran through a couple different scenarios. As we mentioned, our friends over at the NFL Stock Exchange are currently doing their charity mock draft marathon. So be sure to go check out the boys once we're done here. And while we were on the air, they selected Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech with the Jaguars' 56th overall pick. They're not doing any trades because they're literally doing every pick. God bless them. So they have the Jaguars taking Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech. We took Skylar Gill-Howard with pick 203 in mock draft 1A. And what's crazy about that is so many, when this process began back in January, earmarked Lee Hunter as a potential fit for the Big Cats. Once upon a time, played at UCF. It's interesting because I was just reading his write-up in Dane Brugler's The Beast, and he doesn't believe he has the pass rush juice that perhaps some others do. And once again, he says he's a two-gapping nose, much like we believe Christian Miller is also a nose, but I feel like he's got more pass rush juice. I feel like he could split out to a little bit more of a 3-tech if you needed him to, alongside Devon Hamilton in an even front. But hey, look at what Anthony Campanelli was able to do with so many of these same players that 1 year prior won 4 games. I'm not going to count out the staff at this point in time because they haven't given me a reason to think that they can't take lemons, make lemonade, take circle pegs, and find a way to make what was a square hole a circle hole. Let's hit your questions, your comments before we get out of here. Social was a little surprised that I took Caleb Proctor in scenario 1B so early. It's funny, Social, but you heard James Gladstone say Thursday about tendencies and this idea of, while yes, teams are going to break tradition, you also know what certain teams are thinking. And if you go back, and we all know what team he knows how they think because he worked there for 9 years. When you go back to Mike Silver's piece in The Athletic from the Jaguars war room last year, someone in the room asked him, who are the Rams taking at pick 51 or whatever it was? And he was like, oh, they're going to take Terrence Ferguson. They're going to take the Athletic tight end. And who'd they take? And I just feel like Caleb Proctor, whether it's the Rams or the Eagles, because they have a track record of taking those undersized interior defensive linemen with a little bit of the pass rush juice that just need to be coached up, I just feel like he's next. And I just think Gladstone's going to want to make sure that he gets that guy before Howie or Les Snead do. Hef says, Bobo stinks as an OC. That's why Oscar Delp wasn't able to develop. He'll make up for in the gap power scheme. Yeah, I think Oscar Delp would be a really good fit for the Big Cats. Something I'm going to be working on doing a little bit more intel because, I really like, what's his face? Luke, what's LL? I'm blanking on his last name. You probably have it, Hef, who's still at Georgia. And I just think that that's a tight end room that it's hilarious because Brock Bowers came out of Athens and we know now he's arguably the best tight end in the league, in the world. And he was given a platform to shine. And I know Tom Monken was the OC back then, but at the same time, like they've got some cats that they're right there. They just need the pathway to stardom, just like Brock Bowers was given. And so, yeah, Oscar Delp, I think, would be a sound pick. And of course, Sam Roush went as our first tight end selection in mock draft scenario 1A. And then Riley Nowakowski and Dallin Bentley were the 2 7th-round tight ends selected in the 1A and 1B mock draft scenarios that we ran through today. Brandon, do you think Chris McClellan is a fit? I've heard that they were doing a little work, not the Jags specifically, but like teams in the range he could be going, and that, maybe there was some interest. So yeah, I think he could be. Mizzou, of course, started his career at Florida. And so perhaps, I really don't know, boys. I really don't know, gals. I'm really fascinated to see what the Jaguars do in next week's NFL draft because there's a lot of wiggle room, and it's why we ran through multiple scenarios today. I see a couple of you guys, 48 Boots, still leaving comments. Our time is up here on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network, but don't worry, we will be back for a pre-draft edition of the program next week in our new time slot, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network. Appreciate you